This is about the Willimantic Union Depot. There. Okay. So a little background on Willimantic, so you know where we're at right now. It was originally named Willimantic Falls, part of Winter County, chartered in 1821. American thread was very popular here. In addition to others, they built several large mills. At the time, it was the largest producer of thread in the entire world. And Willimantic became known as the Thread City. And from the end of the Civil War to operated World War II, Willimantic was the largest producer of silk and cotton thread anywhere. And immigrants from around the world moved here in search of work in the mills. And obviously the railroad was an integral part of transporting goods and workers to those mills. It's a copy of one mill that's still standing, is actually a beautiful structure. So a little bit more. American thread moved to North Carolina in 1985, leaving many of the vacant buildings with a high unemployment rate. Subsequently, crime and drug use became an issue, and an arson fire destroyed one of those mills in June of 1995, and it was a 400,000 square foot structure that was leveled. Willimantic today has a population of 25,000. Obviously, you see the major employers are smaller companies, Wyndham Waterbed, Walmart, Eastern Connecticut State University, and General Cable. And obviously, I went to the Connecticut Eastern Railroad Museum, which we'll talk about later. And new investments are bringing Willimantic back to its heyday. So this is a Google Earth view of the Willimantic yard, what exists. We're pretty much right around here, the church. But that's the yard right there. If we just hit it one more time. That's approximately where the station was. As you can see, there's nothing there right now except for a nice little parking lot. And this was a street called Rowan Street, which is long gone. There's a couple buildings there. And the footbridge we're going to talk about in a little while too. So we had three major lines that went through. So in 1849, the New London, Willimantic, and Palmer Road laid tracks connecting New London to Palmer. That later became known as New London Northern, and this little tiny railroad you probably never heard of called Central Vermont. In 1849, Hartford Providence and Fishkill laid tracks connecting the Hudson River to Providence. That later became part of the New York and New England. And in 1872, the New Haven, Middletown, and Willimantic laid tracks connecting to New Haven. That obviously became later part of the New York and New England. Then the New York, New Haven, and Hartford, and that was part of the famous airline that ran from New York to Boston. And that middle picture right there is part of that's Hartford, Providence, and Fishkill engine. So back on the original station, it was a small one-story wooden structure located between the two original rail lines. It was built in 1850 at a cost of $2,250. It was named Willimantic Depot. It was located between two busy routes and multiple tracks. So at very least, it was reported one pedestrian was killed when he was approaching the station. So calls were made to build a new one as early as 1855. Obviously, those stations was proven to be pretty hazardous to passengers. Okay? And a new one would not be constructed until 1883. So this was an 1856 map. If you hit it one more time, you see the arrow. It's kind of hard to see, but there's actually the two lines over here. They split, and that little black dot right there was the original depot. So this is a map of all the train lines in 1893. Hit it one more time. So that's Willimantic right there. So you have the New Haven and Hartford Road going over up to Putnam. This is obviously Central Vermont in the light orange over here. And then the Hartford's Providence and Fishkill, which was the New York and New England, came down and went up over to Plainfield. Okay, this is a map in 1876. That was the original station. These maps always kill me because when I originally saw this, I'm thinking that's like a 5-story building, but those are actually people there, so it's obviously not to scale. But that was Railroad Street. A lot of you probably came across the Frog Bridge. The Frog Bridge would have been right about here, okay? And that's Main Street, and that was the original station. Okay. So that's a picture of the original station in 1878. As you can see between the two main lines right there. So the second station was built in 1883 and opened on November 19th at a cost of which is over $8,500. It was located north of all the tracks. It was a 130 by 32 foot wooden structure with a slate roof and a dormer in the middle. It was a 25 foot by 40 foot baggage room constructed next to the west in 1891. Gentleman, we just met the architect. He has a bunch of copies of the original plans from Peter's Railroad Museum. So we're going to look at those later. And in 1909, the New York, New Haven, and Hartford called for an even larger station. However, that would never come to fruition, mostly because of the automobile. And the station was actually partly damaged in the hurricane of '38. We'll talk about that in a second. So this was, I couldn't find a date for this, but I'm assuming this is late 1800s, early 1900s, that the footbridge was built in 1909, to give it one more time. So that's where the footbridge is, or would have been. This was the station obviously here. This is the Glen Northern, so it became Central Vermont. That's their little freight house and coal sheds, all that good stuff. We did it 3 more times. So this is just, it's kind of hard to see, but these are the 3 lines. So you have the Central Vermont over here, the New York, New Haven, was this line, and then the Harper's Providence and Fishkill was over here. There's another picture in 1898. That's the second station with the dormer. That's the, as you see, that's during the railroad right there. Another picture. Another picture in 1910. This is taken from the footbridge after it was built in 1909. You just snap these. There's a bunch of pictures. It's June 24th, 1916. That's the picture of the baggage depot right next to it. That's we couldn't tell the number, but that is the Central Vermont right there. And that's the station in the background. Another picture. This is go back real quick. That was a. You can see it better online, but these are Central Vermont boxcars there. So that's the Liberty Bell when it came through in June 16th, 1903. This is another picture, 1950s. And this, I believe, was one of the latest pictures before it was torn down in 1955. And that's without it. That was after the Hurricane of 38 really took up the door. Okay. So the footbridge, I just want to talk about because it's actually pretty interesting. It's 630 feet long. It's longer than a modern American football field. The Willimantic footbridge spans a river, a road, a sidewalk, and a railroad track. The only such footbridge east of the Mississippi to do so. It was constructed in 1906 primarily as a route for foot traffic for the workers, and it's actually listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, so hopefully it should be going anywhere anytime soon. And these are just a bunch of pictures of that. So this was, this is Railroad Street right here, and the station would have been right about here. Just kind of more pictures. All around the 1900s. Okay. This is a photo in the early 70s. So this is still Railroad Street here. That's the footbridge. Okay. So this is Railroad Street today, as you can see. Very, very beautiful. This is your entrance to the footbridge. There's actually a little plaque right here that explains it, but this does go over the railroad tracks. Railroad Street would have been right about here. That's obviously long gone. So the Hurricane 38 damaged a lot of rails, but it didn't completely destroy the station. However, it did remove the dormer. So it's one. Yep, that's fine. So this is one. I have 3 photos of the damage. So that's one. So we got some beds, obviously, and then one more. So this is a photo taken by Robert Kaplan in 2016, the early 80s. The next one, if the station still existed, this is my little artist Photoshop graph. It's probably approximately where it would have been. So yeah, obviously it's not a passenger train, but that's all right. They have a long way to head. So there was talk about a 3rd station before they took it down in 1955. New York, New Haven was still doing passenger service. So they wanted to build a smaller station in near Bridge Street. However, there's a massive flood in 1955 which completely destroyed the bridge in Putnam. So that completely just made that route unnecessary. So in 1991, a small platform was finally constructed to use the Bridge Street for passengers using Amtrak's Montreal, which traveled from the Central Vermont route from London to Montreal, Quebec. And that only lasted 4 years, and that just continued in April of 1995. Since then, Willimantic has not seen passenger service. So New York and New Haven's plans, original plans, let's go back. This was where the platform was. This is where they wanted to have their station. This is actually Bridge Street right here. This building still exists. This still exists, but everything else is long gone. Which one? This. Oh, okay. Oh, nice, excellent. All right, and then this is the day paper, I believe, took the shot to 1991. So this was actually just after past midnight when this train came through, so a lot of people were celebrating the return. And this is a more recent photo from Lee Carlson. If you just get that one more time, it just shows that's where the platform was for those passengers, and that is Bridge Street right there. Okay. And this is the current Google Street View. That's the platform that they use. So the third station was slated to be right there, but obviously that never happened. And obviously today's rail traffic, just happening on Central Railroad and Providence, Worcester, and that's it. Short and sweet. Thank you for your time.